After 6 heartwarming encounters, Officer discovers the incredible reason behind the puppy's pleas. Officer Jake Thompson ignored the weight of the day as he drove the familiar streets of Maple Grove. He felt a throbbing tension in his chest, a reminder that parenthood rested on 2 exhausted shoulders. He ran his fingers through his unkempt hair, fighting against fatigue. Just as he pulled up by the library, an unusual sound broke through his thoughts. Tiny whimpers that clawed at his heart. He stepped out into the evening light, and there it was, a scruffy puppy curled up by the entrance, eyes as big and pleading as a child's. Jake knew he should just report it. Protocol stated to call animal control, to remain detached. But those soulful brown eyes, shimmering with vulnerability, pulled him in deeper than he'd expected. He squatted down low, trying to keep his face neutral. "Hey there," he murmured. "You lost, buddy?" That moment became suspended in his mind, where the traction of everyday duties faded, and something simpler crept in, a strong urge to scoop the small creature up and take it home. Reluctantly, Jake whispered, "Buddy, huh?" As he gently scooped the pup into his arms, a spark of warmth ignited in him, but doubt seeped in close behind it. At home, the chaos of balancing a single-parent life and police work felt amplified by Buddy's arrival. Bills loomed in the corners of his mind, reminders of long nights and unfulfilling silences at the dinner table. He wrestled with the conflicting desires for family time and the demands of his job. His mind surged, questioning authority when it should have held steady. What if I can't manage this? His kids needed him to show up, not just physically but emotionally too. As he watched them race through the park one sunny Saturday, laughter bubbling in a way it hadn't for too long, he felt the tension thaw slightly. Buddy chased after them, mouth open in a joyful pant. But just as the laughter reached a peak, the image of the elderly woman on a nearby bench sharpened in his mind. She'd approached him last week, misty-eyed, shared her battle with loss. Her story felt like a mirror held up to his own struggles. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But just as Jake mingled in the flow of their joy, a siren wailed from down the street, shattering the peaceful afternoon. Instinct kicked in, lungs tightening as thoughts spiraled into worry. A confrontation loomed on the horizon, and his ready smile faltered. What if this isn't just another call? Would he be able to keep his family together while dealing with a chaotic community unraveling? He clutched Buddy tighter, feeling the animal's heartbeat pulse against his own. In that charged moment, it all flickered before him. This one small creature evoked connection, loyalty, the very essence of life in his town. Yet the sobering confrontation echoed in the distance, a reality of what lay ahead, where he'd have to stand at the crossroads, wrestling his longings against bitter truths. Indecision clawed at him, taunting the very foundation of hope he'd built for his children. The weight of unmade choices hung heavy, leaving everything unresolved, with the future of Buddy, his family, and the entire community trembling in uncertainty. Jake's footsteps echoed as he returned to his cruiser, the chaos of the park still buzzing in his mind. The siren's wail faded, but it was replaced by a different urgency. Each ring of the radio sent a jolt through him. He flipped open the dashboard, fighting a fresh wave of hesitation. Would he be able to rise above mere survival to actually lead? The call came through, an altercation near Maple Grove's community center. He clenched the wheel, torn between his duty and the warmth that Buddy had ignited within him. The fleeting laughter of his children at the park juxtaposed against the tension of the sirens reverberated painfully in his thoughts. Could he still be the father they needed while also standing tall as an officer? As he arrived on the scene, Jake was hit with the familiar sights of blue lights flashing against the fading dusk. A small crowd encircled 2 figures, their voices rising and falling in a chaotic symphony of conflict. It was a sight he had witnessed before, yet each time felt like a test of his resolve. He reminded himself of his purpose in this moment, not just as an enforcer of the law, but as a protector within a family. Navigating through the crowd, he caught snippets of accusations and anger. It felt heavy, like static filling the air. He focused on a pair of young men heatedly shouting at each other, both seemingly too enveloped in their rage to notice him. "Hey, break it up!" he called, his voice cutting through the noise. Instinctively, the group turned to look, and silence settled in. He noticed the flash of fear and respect in their eyes, a shift he often took for granted but now felt the weight of. This was his moment to reclaim control, not just of the situation but of himself, to finally navigate the tumult within. With deliberate steps, Jake approached the two young men. He could feel his heart racing, but steadiness crept in, bolstered by the thought of his kids and the resolve to create a life filled with joy, not fear. "You two need to take a step back," he said calmly, putting his hands in plain sight. "Let's talk this out. No one needs to get hurt tonight." As he reached out a hand to one of them, he saw the conflict, an internal battle playing out painfully on their faces. One hesitated, anger melting into confusion. Jake sensed an opportunity. "I get it," he said, lowering his voice. "Life can feel messy, and sometimes we take it out on each other. But we're better when we talk. Let's find a common ground." The heavy veil of conflict began to lift. Slowly, the tension dissipated as Jake guided the conversation, drawing on techniques he had learned over the years. He began to see how this exchange could change lives, each word becoming a deliberate touchpoint, knitting connection rather than division. He wondered if, in this small act of bridge building, he was also discovering a part of himself that could lead compassionately both at work and at home. The commotion quelled, and he felt an odd sense of pride as one of the young men stepped forward to shake his hand, dropping the animosity. With the young men separated and cooling off, Jake made a mental note to check on the community center later that week. There was so much work to be done, not just in enforcing laws, but in understanding the scars that thrived in silence. Maybe, just maybe, he could cultivate change by turning those silent moments into opportunities for dialogue. Returning home, Buddy bounced beside him, energy buzzing like a tether to this newfound resolve. It was time to face the home life with the same intention he had found on the street. Yet as he opened the front door, a chilling silence settled in, a stark contrast to the warmth he had anticipated. His instincts kicked in again. This felt off. A note lay on the kitchen table, its starkness cutting through the evening air. Who had come while they were away? Why did his stomach drop at the sight of it? Jake stepped deeper into the house, feeling the weight of uncertainty loom high. What was waiting for him inside those walls? As the door creaked open, Jake's senses sharpened. The silence wrapped around him like a shroud, oppressive and thick. He moved cautiously, each step resonating with the echoes of his earlier confrontation. The familiarity of his own home offered little comfort. Instead, it felt foreign now, charged with an anxiety he couldn't shake. Jake approached the kitchen table, the note taunting him with its simplicity. His hands trembled as he reached for it, instincts flaring even as curiosity gnawed at him. Unfolding the note revealed a single scrawled message. "I know what you did. Meet me at the old mill." Panic twisted in his gut. Who was this person? What did they know? And why did it feel so personal? Conflict swirled within him. Should he involve the department, report this? Or did this call for a personal response? He was no stranger to intimidation. Yet, this felt different, more threatening. A shadow of doubt lingered. Was he strong enough to confront whatever waited for him? He searched for the steady, principled officer he had been moments ago on the street. He thought of the young man who had shaken his hand, willing to change. Could he muster that same courage now to face something unseen but palpably dangerous? The darkness lurking in his own mind threatened to pull him under, yet a flicker of resolve ignited. Buddy, ever watchful at his feet, raised his head, sensing the tension. Jake knelt beside the dog, their bond grounding him. "What if this is about my past?" he whispered, revealing thoughts aloud that his heart wrestled with. "What if I've made mistakes that haunt me still?" If there was one lesson he had learned, It was that fear could either imprison or propel you. Taking a deep breath, he committed to confronting this unknown head-on. He grabbed his keys, the cool metal reassuring against the urgency bubbling in his chest. "We'll figure this out, buddy," he said to the dog, determination growing with each word. He drove through the winding streets of Maple Grove, processing every moment spent reflecting on his choices. The calm he had initially felt after the confrontation at the park began to fray at the seams, frayed threads leading him back to the self-doubt challenging him more than any external force ever could. As he neared the old mill, a place once teeming with life but now a shell of its former self, Jake wrestled with a multitude of thoughts. Could he truly confront the shadows of his past? Was this a reckoning he had inadvertently invited into his life? What pieces of himself had he buried so deep that they could resurface in a whisper of a note? Arriving, he parked the cruiser and stepped into the fading daylight, each footfall weighted with consequence. As the building loomed before him, its rusted exterior matched the turmoil inside him. The exit was clear: retreat into the safety of his resolve, or step forward into the unknown, whatever that might bring. Jake summoned every fragment of bravery within him, pushing past the crumbling doorway. The echo of his own footfalls reverberated lightly against the hollow walls, deepening his sense of isolation. But he was not just afraid of the darkness surrounding him. He feared discovery, of truths he had yet to confront even from himself. Then he heard it, the sound of someone else shifting in the shadows, waiting just beyond his sight. And for the first time in what felt like years, he questioned whether he was really ready to face whatever awaited him. The moment of truth was upon him, and all roads converged at this singular point. But before he could gather himself, a voice cut through the air, delivering an unexpected jolt. "You didn't think I'd just let it go, did you?" Jake's heart raced as he faced forward, ready to confront whatever past he had tried to outrun. The time had come for him to face not only what others knew, but the buried fears that lurked within himself. The words hung in the air like a thick fog, the voice piercing through Jake's tension. He squinted into the dim light filtering through broken windows, fighting the churning in his stomach. Recognition sliced through the shadows, and suddenly it all rushed back. The faces, the choices, the buried remnants of a life he had thought he could leave behind. "Who are you?" Jake managed to say, his voice rough like gravel. He took a step forward, driven by a mix of resolve and unspoken dread. The figure emerged slowly, a familiar form wrapped in a hood, a face both haunting and reassuring. "It's been a long time, hasn't it?" the figure replied, pulling down the hood to reveal the sharp features of Leo, an old acquaintance from the precinct. Suddenly, the shadows of fear morphed into recognition. But with that recognition came a torrent of memories Jake had long since obscured to survive. "You shouldn't be here." Jake's words were edged with warning and a hint of desperation. The weight of his past tightened around him like a noose, and he fought against it, refusing to be dragged back into a darkness he had worked tirelessly to escape. "Neither should you, but here we are, aren't we?" Leo stepped closer, his expression unreadable. "This isn't just about us anymore, Jake. You know that." Jake pointedly inhaled, his instincts bristling. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand what you did. It's time to face the music." Leo's voice was steady but carried the urgency of a storm. "You think you can just move on because you wear a badge? It doesn't work that way." The truth in Leo's words struck Jake like a physical blow. He had hidden behind his badge, wrapped himself in the very fabric of law and order to shield his failures, yet here was Leo, dismantling that facade with every word. It confronted something deep within him, an uncomfortable realization that perhaps he had never truly reconciled his choices. "Listen," Leo continued, urgency edging his tone. "You can't run from this. Not anymore. There's a reason that note found you. It's not just about me. It's about the people you've impacted, the ones you hurt. We can't move forward without reckoning with the past." As Jake's breath quickened, he felt a flash of anger mixed with helplessness. "You think you can just come after me and clean my slate? That I'm not trying to be a better man every day? This is my life now. Your life, or the life you're trying to create on the ashes of what led you here. You know, they say that facing your demons empowers you, but it can also haunt you. The truth hurts, especially when it's unmasked. But you'd rather play pretend, wouldn't you? The tension smoldered around them, thickening with unspoken fears and regrets. "I am done pretending," Jake shouted, the force of his voice reverberating in the hollow mill. It felt cathartic, liberating, yet something else stirred, a faint glimmer of doubt. Was he truly done, or merely embarking on a deeper deception? He stepped back, uncertainty creeping back like an unwelcome shadow. "What is it you really want from me?" "I want you to stop running. I want you to remember who you were and who you can be," Leo said, his gaze unwavering. "You're afraid of losing everything, but sometimes what we're really afraid of is facing ourselves. And right now, you need to decipher whether you are the man you claim to be or just an illusion." For the first time in a long while, Jake felt the weight of the world crashing around him. The decision loomed: stay in the comforting lie of self-deception, or take the terrifying step into self-discovery. As realization seeped in, threatening to warp his carefully constructed world, he grasped the one truth he could lean on. He had to confront this now. Then, for the first time in years, Jake felt a pulse of courage surge through him, intertwined with dread. It was time to unveil the hidden pieces of himself he had long avoided. But as he opened his mouth, preparing to unravel his truth, the ground shook underfoot as another voice suddenly emerged from the shadows, sending a chill through him. "You think you can handle the truth?" Staring into the darkness where the new voice emerged, Jake's heart raced again. This was only the beginning. The real conflict was just unfolding. Jake steadied himself, the cold breath of the unseen figure crawling along the nape of his neck like a warning. He felt driven by an instinctual fight-or-flight response, the memories of past confrontations rising in his mind. The struggle for composure was palpable. He couldn't let this be about anyone but himself. "Who are you?" he demanded, voice firm despite the tremor beneath it. He shifted his focus, eyes darting from Leo back to the encroaching darkness. He needed to regain control. A laugh rumbled from the shadowy figure, void of warmth yet falsely reassuring. "You're already familiar with me, Jake, the specter of your past. Memories you've buried deep. So deep they're like a repressed sin, waiting for a moment of weakness to surface." Challenging those words required more than bravado. His pulse raced, not out of fear of this unknown entity, but from something deeper, a confrontation with a version of himself he had tried to obliterate. Gritting his teeth, he forced restraint into his posture. "Enough games," Jake snapped. "I don't have to play this out again. You want something? Just say it." "Very well," the figure intoned, stepping forward into the light. The striking but unrecognizable features settled into view. Jake's breath caught. This figure was a part of his past he had suppressed, intertwining memories surfacing with uncomfortable vividness. It transformed the confrontation into something grander, more significant than mere words exchanged in fear. "Do you remember me now?" the figure asked, eyebrows furrowing cynically. "How about the choices you've made, the lives you've changed, for better or worse?" More vibrations of time echoed within him. Each word was a sledgehammer against the crumbling wall of self-denial. "What's your goal here?" Jake pressed, desperate to steer the exchange back towards him. "You think you can just waltz back into my life and rattle me with your games? My life is different now." "Different or altered?" The figure leaned closer, dissecting Jake's resolve through the articulate stance of confrontation. "You think the badge grants you immunity from past transgressions? You chose the path of law so you wouldn't have to confront yourself. But here's the catch. Running only leads you back to where you started." A heavy silence muted the sound of machinery in the forgotten mill, and new dimensions of clarity began etching themselves into Jake's mind. The walls he had erected were made of excuses and denial, and the truths they've concealed were starting to break through the shell of his constructed identity. "I have moved forward. I'm not that person anymore." Jake's denial flared again, but he felt cracks appear in the armor he wore, and there was no hiding from it. "I've worked to become better. Becoming better requires acknowledgement of your past, not avoidance. You want to create a narrative about redemption, but redemption is rooted in acceptance, not illusion." The figure's voice was sharp, yet strangely comforting, grounding Jake in the weight of reality he desperately tried to shake off. Jake grappled with that reality, as his interior battle surged. He had always felt as if he was on the cusp of personal breakthrough, but veiled it under consistent reminders of his new life. Maybe the facade had always been his greatest difficulty, and in denying the past he had only fostered a shadow of denial. Every decision, every choice he made was connected to the intricate web of his earlier life. If he truly desired growth, it required acknowledgement of, not just the achievements, but also the scars. "Are you prepared to face that?" the figure pressed, a challenge wrapped in genuine inquiry. "Are you ready to wrestle with the truth?" Jake faced his past embodiment head-on, trepidation swirling within him. He had to confront not just what lay within the shadows, but also his fear of facing the full spectrum of his identity and choices. Yet as he stood at that precipice, he felt an energy brewing, a silent determination regarding the question that lay before him. And then it hit him like a spark igniting a fuse. What if? But before he could finish that thought, an explosion of sound erupted from the hollow space, forming an unexpected crescendo of chaos. The ground beneath him trembled as he squared his shoulders, heart racing. Was he ready to unearth what had been dormant for too long? As the smoke and dust began to swirl around him, a conviction emerged within Jake. It was time to dive into the depths of his past and confront the truth, whatever shape it took. But first, he needed to navigate through this chaos that had suddenly enveloped him. With unyielding resolve, he leaped forward, ready to face the source of that tumultuous sound, uncertainty mixing with the anticipation of newfound clarity. The chaos surged through the dimly lit mill, a cacophony that rattled the very bones of Jake's determination. Gritting his teeth, he pushed through the swirls of dust and debris, every fiber of his being screaming to retreat into the safety of the life constructed around him. Yet a counterforce ignited within, a compelling urge to dissect the rubble of his past and expose the unvarnished truths lurking in the shadows. Jake moved forward, each step heavy yet resolute. The invisible specter taunted him from behind, but began to lose its grip on his psyche. "You can't run," it whispered, its voice curling around the air like smoke. "This is your reckoning." Breathing deeply, Jake's senses sharpened. He was no longer a frightened boy trying to outrun his history. He was an officer, battle-tested in the light of high-stakes situations, yet the personal battles had always been hidden away, unresolved. The tumult around him swelled again, but this time it felt like the beat of a drum, calling him to rise, to confront, to reclaim his narrative. As the dust settled, defining shapes emerged, broken machinery and twisted metal. He scanned the remnants of the past, each fragment telling a story of neglect, past decisions that resonated with his own fears and failures. What if this is all that's left? He wondered, grappling with the remnants of despair. What if moving on hadn't meant erasing memories, but rather understanding them? The thought pressed fiercely against his mind, insisting that growth could spring neither from denial nor departure from his identity, but from an intimate relationship with his past. He looked toward where the shadow had last stood, his heart thumping like a battle drum. "If you're a part of me," Jake called into the shadows, "then show yourself. I'm ready to face whatever you are." Silence hung in the air, dense and palpable, before a flicker of movement caught his eye. The figure materialized once more, draped in shadows, yet undeniably familiar. The specter wore his own regret, a reflection of the choices that had shaped him. "Are you ready to confront your truth then?" it challenged, voice dripping with a mocking edge. Yet underlying it was a thread of genuine inquiry. Jake's heart pulsed with uncertainty, but the external chaos had quieted, leaving this confrontation poised in a stillness that felt evolutionary. "Yes," he declared, conviction intertwining with lingering fear. "Let's do this." What followed was not an explosion of emotion or revelation. Instead, it was a gradual unearthing, layer by layer, a peeling back of the bravado, the pretense, the carefully manicured denial. Memories began to flood back, faces from a life half remembered, moments of cowardice, instances of bravery that seemed to both define and defy him. "You think you can overcome me like this?" the figure asked, frustration mingling with a hint of admiration. "Your pain, your failures, they're part of you. Accepting them doesn't weaken you. It empowers you." "I'm not afraid of the past," Jake responded, surprising even himself with the steadiness of his voice. "I'm afraid of repeating it. of being trapped in my own mistakes. With gnawing intensity, the shadow advanced, forcing Jake to meet his own gaze, a dialogue silently exchanged through the reflection of longing and regret. And if I told you that the cycle only continues if you refuse to learn from it? The air thickened as if the mill itself was waiting for his reply, for even the silence carried a weight that demanded engagement. Jake had longed for this moment of clarity, the opportunity to fuse his past with the man he had become, to forge an identity unencumbered by shame and guilt. Then here's the challenge, he retorted, grounding his posture, allowing confidence to rise within him. You may embody my past, but you don't dictate my future. The figure paused, surprise evident in its expression. Are you certain about that? It questioned, tilting its head in a way that expressed both curiosity and confrontation. With a renewed determination swelling in his chest, Jake stepped forward, feeling the thrill of an impending breakthrough vibrate through him. Yes, it's time for me to own my history. I'm ready to break the cycle. But as the words left his mouth, the unexpected eruption of machinery behind him resumed, reverberating through the mill like a thunderous echo of unresolved tensions. An avalanche of uncertainty threatened to engulf him once more. But within the tremors of chaos, Jake realized he stood at the cusp of transformation. Deeper truths lay nestled within further confrontations. He took a steadying breath, ready to delve deeper into the revelations waiting to be unearthed. What he didn't know was that this was just the beginning of the reckoning. In the midst of noise, clarity was waiting just beyond the next turn. The machinery whirred and clanked around Jake, drowning out the echoes of introspection. It felt chaotic and disordered, an apt representation of the turmoil brewing within him. Each hiss of steam and clank of metal drove home the urgency of his situation. He was standing at a precipice, on the cusp of a significant evolution, yet tethered by the very fears he aimed to shred. Every honk of displaced metal seemed to mock him, reminiscent of the choices he had evaded for too long. Drawing a deliberate breath, Jake turned his focus back to the figure. The shadow of his regrets loomed closer. Familiarity wrapped around its form as tendrils of recognition wove through him. I have accepted you, Jake stated more firmly this time, his tone unwavering. But acceptance alone isn't enough. You're here to challenge me, and I'm ready. The apparition seemed to shift, its intensity radiating confidence like an attendant waiting for his verdict. Then confront what's deeper than acceptance, the truths behind those very regrets. What have you avoided? What actions must you reclaim to render me powerless? As those questions hung in the air, Jake felt a tightening in his chest. His mind raced. How many times had he ducked beneath the weight of his failures? He believed the guise of bravery could keep his past shackled. Yet here stood a manifestation of that past, a side of him he never thought could demand confrontation, let alone understanding. It's not just the mistakes, he murmured, stepping closer, vulnerability cracking through the once formidable wall he'd erected. It's the people I let down, the promises I failed to keep. I still hear the disappointment in their voices when they think of me. The figure's eyes glinted with understanding and challenge. Could it be, then, that in redefining your relationship with those memories, you can fortify your resolve? What if your failures are a blueprint, not a sentence? Jake stared, a flicker of enlightenment cutting through the haze of his doubts. The shadows of those regret-laden moments, each flanked by a shame he had tucked away, had started to glow with purpose. One personal experience jutted out like a jagged rock in his mind. The day he failed to protect a fellow officer, and found himself feigning courage in the wake of calamity. Why do I keep returning to that day? He wondered aloud, the tremor of vulnerability surfacing again. It felt disarming, yet freeing. What if I used that pain to fuel my progress instead of allowing it to paralyze me? The shadow nodded, a spectral smile almost brushing its lips. To harness pain, you must acknowledge its presence. Confront not just your own mistakes, but also the essence of those you deemed worth saving. Find out who stands with you now. Forge new paths into the future with their strength. Jake stepped back, digesting the concept. It was intimidating but liberating. Could he craft a narrative of redemption from the ashes of regret? This was a novel concept, urging him to break not only the cycle, but to redefine himself through connection and responsibility. As the machinery screeched behind him, sending a fresh cloud of dust into the air, his resolve hardened. The words faltered momentarily, then surged with raw intention. I will reach out to them. Not just to demonstrate my change, but to mend what can still be repaired. The shadow flickered, approval lighting its form. It began to dissipate, the tension in the air shifting. In forging alliances with those you have wronged, you will rescue yourself. Jake felt the remnants of fear falling away, replaced with anticipation. He was entering a new chapter, one that challenged him to engage with authenticity, to confront every part of his identity, past, present, and future. But just as the shadow's presence faded, a loud crash echoed through the mill. Confusion wrapped around him as Jake spun, adrenaline surging anew. What had he just awakened? His heart raced as the alarms blared. Each signal was a reminder that real change wasn't merely about internal reflection. It might involve tangible, immediate consequences. The moment had crystallized. Clarity beckoned, but danger loomed on the horizon. Jake braced himself, ready to face whatever else awaited him in the clamorous shadows. What awaited him next would demand he prioritize not just his past, but the people he hadn't yet reached out to. Jake's heartbeat thundered in his chest, drowning out the cacophony of alarms and machinery. The world around him dissolved into a singular focus. The sound of the crash reverberated through the mill, igniting a primal instinct deep within. The apparition had urged him toward personal resolution, but now it was the present demanding his attention. He scanned the chaotic surroundings, his breathing rapid and shallow, readying himself for whatever darkness emerged from the disarray. Instinctively he moved toward the sound, where fallen beams and scattered metal sat in disarray. A flicker of something, perhaps a reflection of light or a shadowy movement, caught his eye, anchoring his gaze to a corner strewn with debris. Within that collapsing space, clarity sharpened his perception. He had to confront not just the hypothetical figures of failure, but real, tangible consequences lingering in his current reality. Stay focused, he whispered to himself, forcing grounded thoughts through his rising panic. He needed a plan, a tool to navigate this unexpected urgency. Each step crunched underfoot, a reminder that one misstep could lead to disaster. But another realization loomed larger. Each step also represented the opportunity to reclaim his agency. As he reached the chaotic pile, he noticed a familiar figure struggling. An apprentice engineer, Marcus, pinned beneath a heavy sheet of metal. Jake's stomach twisted. The kid had looked up to him once, eager and full of potential. He had watched Jake with a spark of admiration. Now that light was in jeopardy. "Marcus!" Jake called out, pushing aside a reflexive pang of guilt at having previously prioritized his weaknesses over the team. The boy's eyes were wide with panic, and Jake felt a rush of determination settle in his gut. This was a pivotal moment, not just for him, but for Marcus. How could he possibly cater to the repairs of his past if he failed to help the present? "Get help!" Marcus yelled, straining against the weight. "I can't." "No time for that," Jake replied, a surge of adrenaline warming him. "We're getting you out." He dove into the wreckage, his hands finding purchase as metal bits scraped against his skin. Reaching for the edge of the sheet, he strained with every muscular fiber. It was a battle against not only the materials but his own self-doubt. What if I fail again? The thought wormed its way into his mind, but the urgency of Marcus's situation screamed louder. It broke through the parchment of indecision as he thought back to the shadow, challenging him to reclaim his resolve and responsibility. With a grunt, he lifted the metal slightly, just enough for Marcus to wiggle free. The kid gasped and scrambled out, his expression shifting from fear to disbelief. You helped me. But Jake, how did you—" "I'm not done yet," Jake interjected, urgency bleeding into his tone. "We need to get everyone out." The noise of alarms faded as clarity set in, balancing on the threshold of action and change. He had not only rescued Marcus, but ignited something within himself, a pivot toward responsibility that transcended personal regret. It resonated with a strength he had previously doubted existed. "Stay close to me and keep moving," Jake commanded, guiding Marcus through the maze of wreckage. Each maneuver through the debris was a step away from his past failures, a tactical retreat toward proactive engagement with his purpose. They emerged into a corridor just as disarray erupted beyond. The sounds of chaos, the shouts, the sirens, the mechanical roars of machines awakening from their slumber, painted a stark picture of both destruction and opportunity. He could hear the tremor in his voice, but a newfound authority gripped him. "Jake!" another voice called. It was Lily, his former partner. Relief washed over him as she sprinted toward them. "I was worried. We're evacuating everyone, but there's still—" "Let's move," Jake replied, a deeper intensity carving itself into his determination. "We'll circle back for anyone left behind. I don't want any regrets weighing us down." As they advanced, shadows of the past felt less suffocating. This experience wasn't solely about facing his mistakes, but about confronting new challenges with a collective force. Mutual accountability would fortify him just as much as it protected those around him. Yet as they maneuvered through the chaos, Jake could feel the specter of unresolved regret hanging over him. The ghosts of those he hadn't reached out to still taunted him, beckoning his engagement. "Jake, what about you? You need to face those you let down," Lily urged, her sincerity striking a chord within him. "You're not alone anymore." Her observation lingered, echoing around the machinery. Maybe this is time for all of us to reconnect, he realized, weighing the gravity of her words. But it's only just begun. Ahead, shadows flickered and deepened, suggesting not only the remnants of his identity, but the chance to redefine it among the living. What if facing the past was merely the first step? What awaited him when he confronted those he had wronged? The answers remained to be written in the aftermath of this tumultuous night. Jake pushed through the debris-strewn corridor, urgency propelling him forward as the cacophony of alarms mixed with the frantic chatter of evacuees around him. Every chaotic sound triggered reminders of his past. He could feel Lily's presence just behind him, her commitment a buoy against the encroaching waves of doubt. "Jakey!" A high-pitched voice cut through the chaos like a knife. It was Sophia, Marcus's younger sister, wide-eyed and trembling. "Is Marcus okay?" Jake's heart sank. The weight of her worry collapsed on him, reminding him of what he had failed to protect before. "He's safe, Sophia. He's right behind me," he said, forcing a smile as he turned to check on Marcus. The boy walked a step slower, still a bit disoriented but alive. "Stay close," Jake commanded gently, the instinct to shield them both surging within him. It was not only about surviving the physical wreckage, but cultivating a sanctum against the emotional debris that threatened to overwhelm him once more. As they moved, Jake sensed a shift within his own psyche, instigated by the purpose that previously eluded him. This wasn't merely a rescue mission, it felt like a transformation, a stark reckoning with his past self, the man who had failed his team, ignored their cries, and let fear dictate his decisions. He recalled vividly the last time he had run away, when he had stumbled after failing to support a friend in need. "Jake, you all right?" Lily's voice broke into his thoughts, but the worry in her tone struck a different chord. It was an invitation, a challenge. "This isn't about past regrets. You've got a chance to do better." Her words ignited a fusion of fire and restraint within him. He looked forward, breathing in deeply as he assessed the growing crowd of their colleagues pressuring to escape. They needed direction, and he reached for the burgeoning authority within him. "Lily, can you guide everyone toward the east exit?" he instructed, pointing to a barely illuminated corridor where frantic figures were assembling. "I'll make sure there are no stragglers behind." "Be careful, Jake," she replied, a flash of understanding passing between them. They both knew the risks, the memories that had forged their bruised partnership. As he pressed further, the shadows of guilt and regret loomed over him like an oppressive cloud. Each familiar face he spotted reminded him of the ties he wanted to mend, the friendships he left frayed and unresolved. They emerged, some with wide eyes, lost in fear, others steely with resolve. The juxtaposition ignited something deep within him. "Hey!" he shouted, his voice booming against the backdrop of chaos. "If you can hear me, keep moving. We're heading for safety. Stick together. Let's not leave anyone behind." Each echo of his command was a clashing reminder of the unheeded pleas from those he had known. Could his voice be a balm to heal those old wounds? He grasped the weight of accountability and held it close. It would not crush him. It would propel him. A sudden crash erupted from behind, reverberating through the hall. Panic shot like fire through the crowd, and instinct flared. "Secure the path!" Jake barked. The moment was electric. He finally understood that his past failures would not define his future but would inform it. He had a decision to make, rise above or remain shackled. Marcus and Sophia skittered closer, and Jake reached for them, anchoring them. "Together, we move through this." He felt the energy shifting again, a sweet taste of empowerment as they moved, each person connecting with another, sharing strength through the darkness. "Jake!" It was Lily's voice again, urgency ringing clearly. "There are still people trapped by the machinery. We need to check the storage area. Can you hold the line here?" He hesitated but realized that she was asking for what was right. She trusted him, and he could not return that trust with cowardice. "I'll handle this." "Come on," she urged, a smile breaking through the tension as she dashed back into the fray. With a deep breath, Jake steadied himself, the weight of responsibility morphing into something more structured, his emerging purpose catalyzing an unwavering bravado amidst uncertainty. Perhaps his history of avoidance could transform into a legacy of action and connectedness. But as they swept through the halls, Jake couldn't shake the tightening gut feeling that lingered. What if he failed again at the most critical moment? Behind one of the downed metal sheets, shadows concealed whispered sorrows, and Jake felt the lingering call to face them head-on. If confronting the past could unleash strength, what would facing the legacy he feared yield? He steeled himself, ready to confront whatever lay ahead, potent choices suspended in the air around him. Would he also find forgiveness? For himself, and for those he had neglected? At the far end of the corridor, a flicker of movement caused him to pause. What awaited him now could redefine everything. As Jake navigated through the chaos of the mill, adrenaline coursed through his veins. Each heartbeat matched the rhythm of urgency screaming from the alarms as he assessed the myriad of troubled faces around him. Here in that fray he felt the weight of his past coalesce into something tangible, an opportunity to reinvent not just his current reality, but to amend his past mistakes. He had saved Marcus, and that act surged like electricity through him. It felt like a reclamation of self, a moment where the shadows of guilt began to budge. Now, confronting the whispers of those he had wronged, the colleagues and friends he had let down, loomed larger. With every sullen face turned toward him, he realized he could no longer skirt responsibility. The era of running was over. "Stay close. We'll regroup," he commanded as he herded others towards an exit, his voice steadying while he fought the panic welling up inside. The strained atmosphere buzzed around him, and amidst the turmoil, he spotted Lily re-emerging, urgency written across her features. "Jake, there are still people caught in the storage area." Her words pierced through his self-addressed armor. It was an appeal for action. Rather than retreat, he instinctively positioned himself to lead, to face the impending danger that went beyond himself. "I'll go," Jake asserted, affirming confidence he was still uncertain he possessed. This was the impulse he'd been waiting for, a chance to redefine not just his narrative, but to stand up against the choices that had haunted him. He sprinted toward the storage area, the metallic tang of desperation heavy in the air. Flickering lights cast eerie shadows, awakening echoes of faces he recognized in the past. The weight of guilt hung heavily, yet a flicker of conviction ignited within him. "Anyone trapped in here?" he called out, forcing himself through the doorway barricaded by debris. "Jake, help!" came a muffled voice from behind a tangle of collapsed shelving. His breath hitched as he maneuvered with purpose. This was the test, the intersection of his past mistakes and the responsibility of who he could be now. He reached the shelves and validated a face he knew too well. It was Paula, a fellow officer, barely navigating her own panic. He knelt beside her, heart pounding, locking eyes in a shared moment of realization. "We're getting you out," he reassured her, every ounce of confidence rallying within him. No more distance, no more regrets. With a determined effort, he shimmied beneath the wreckage, pressing with all his might. The adrenaline fueled his resolve as the metal groaned under pressure, inching upward just enough to free her. As Paula staggered back to safety, Her eyes flickered from surprise to recognition. "You came for me. After what happened," she whispered, words laced with unvoiced history. "No time for that now," he said, voice steady but not dismissive. "Let's move." Together they escaped the threshold, the remnants of past choices dissipating into the echoes of alarm. They emerged back into the open area, greeted by the growing sense of communal effort. Other officers were rallying together, tightening bonds forged through shared moments of vulnerability. Recognition began to dawn on Jake. This was his transformation in action. Rather than hiding from past failures, he was weaving new connections, embodying the principles he long evaded. Yet, just as success loomed close, another crash thundered nearby, breaking through any illusion of relief. "Jake," Lily called again, urgency pushing her words forward as she sensed the collective tension rising again. "We need your help here." Through the noise, Jake glanced back. Not only was the past challenging him, but so was the present. His objectives mingled and swirled together, forcing him to confront the gravity of leading despite fear. He hesitated for only a moment, before rushing towards Lily, fallibility melding beautifully with resolution. In the flickering lights of the mill, he had become more than just a survivor. He felt the collective resolve of those around him respond to his leadership. "We can do this together," he shouted over the blaring sirens, something primal awakening within him. He felt emboldened. This wasn't merely navigating chaos, it was building something greater. As the seconds morphed into action, work proved effective in securing the last of the trapped individuals. The team spirit reviving the aspects of humanity he feared had gone forever estranged. One by one, they pulled together to liberate those still entwined in the horror. Each escape through the rubble became a thread connecting them through a shared purpose, sculpting a new narrative for all involved. Finally, with the last of their comrades rescued, Jake stepped back as the evacuees formed a circle around him, relief palpable in air. Each pair of eyes carried the remembrance of danger but also gratitude, an implicit understanding of every struggle and sacrifice etched on their hearts. Lily approached him, a smile beaming through her fatigue. "You did it, Jake. You didn't just face your past. You helped us all move forward." A wave of emotional clarity surged through him. He had weathered not only the storm, but unearthed new connections. With every action, he had put forth the courage he had once thought was unattainable. As he surveyed the team, realization blossomed. This unity recognized not just their shared past but the potential of shared strength, guiding them into a brighter future. It was not a singular moment of transformation, but a series of choices leading to mutual support, resilience, and collective healing. The ghosts he had battled earlier morphed into allies of encouragement, illuminating the way towards recovery. "Thank you," Jake whispered, feeling relieved but empowered by the strength he now nurtured, not merely in himself, but in his team, and the community they would rebuild together. Standing amidst the wreckage of the mill, Jake felt a sense of closure. His journey was still unfolding, but for the first time, he understood that confronting the past wasn't a solitary path. It was the journey of collective healing that carved a road to redemption. It was time for this chapter of his life to conclude, but also for a new story to begin, one brimming with purpose. Though uncertain of what was next, Jake was grounded in the authentic realization of who he was becoming. An officer, a father, a friend, and he was ready to embrace that future. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Every click matters. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. We want to hear from you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories know how important your support is.